Let's go ahead and start our first swatch of colors. Let's take some color, lay it down. Don't overthink it. Clean your brush off. Everyone should be cleaning their brush at this point. Do not overthink it. Apply some color and move on. Next, you're gonna go ahead, get your second swatch of color, place it right next to the first one. Make sure you have enough paint on your brush so that it's easily blendable. You don't want it to dry. You want the paint to remain wet. What we're doing is wet on wet painting. Wet on wet blending. So both of these swatches are wet. I'm just gonna take a clean brush. I cleaned it off in my water. I dried it off really well. And right where the two colors meet, I'm just gonna softly blend those colors out. I'm not gonna over blend it. I gave it about maybe 4 different passes softly. I did not do this. Do not do this. That is not what we want. You should not be pressing this hard against your canvas. Nice and soft. Now when it comes to blending acrylic paint, there are different ways you can blend, but we're gonna use one way, okay? So just pay attention, do not overthink this, and let's get started. What you're gonna do is take one of your shades here. Well, this is a tint, of course. Go ahead and grab enough paint and just swatch it right there. Do not overthink it. Do not create a perfect circle, a perfect square, none of that. We're not doing that. Go ahead, clean off your brush, tap the side, and dry it off. Next, you want to go in here, get enough paint, and swatch it directly next to your first swatch. Side by side. They should be side by side like that. Clean your brush off. Now we're going to go right here where that line is, where they meet, and blend it out. Just literally just go on top of it, blend it out. You can go a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, but you see how that easily blended out with just a few brush strokes. Don't overdo it. If you do, you can always go back in where your color is and add more color on top of it. Okay, you can go back and forth and add more color. But you don't want to overdo it. I'm going to clean my brush off. Not with water, but just with my towel here. Using my towel to clean that brush off. And I'm going to just go in and blend it. And there you have an amazing blend. You're going to do that a few more times. I'm going to take some shaded color, clean my brush off, take some more shaded color, make sure it's enough on there. Swatch it right next to each other, right next door. Clean that brush off. Go where that line is and just blend it. I'm not pressing hard. I'm not doing this. Okay, we do not want to do this. That's not what we want to do. Okay? We literally are just taking our brush and sweeping the blended, that we're just literally sweeping that area where the two colors meet. So let's do that again. Clean my brush off. Sweep the second color right next to it. Clean that brush. So let's go ahead and we are going to start with this part right under this fold right here. So I want to take my darkest shade. I want to go ahead and take that. And I want to neatly apply that. I want to make sure I have enough paint though. Okay, I'm going to neatly apply that right here. And then on this side as well. And as I notice my paint running dry, I'm going to get some more. Apply that. And then I'm going to just take it down right here. Okay, you should have enough paint to where it does not dry quickly. If your paint is drying too quickly, you don't have enough on your canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush off. Dip it in my water, clean it really well. Dip it in my on my towel. Next, I'm going to go ahead and take this here, my first shade, lay it right next door to this one. Make sure you get nice and close to the edge. Add more. I want enough paint so that when I go to blend, I have enough. I am able to do wet on wet blending. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to clean my brush off. In the same way we learn how to blend our swatches, I'm going to go ahead, take this clean brush and blend this area. Matter of fact, I'm not even doing it the right way. You want to go in the direction of the petal. So you see how this petal is curved? You see that? It's curved. You want to go downward in a curved manner. Okay? Curve it. You can always go back in and add more. I'm going to go in, add more of that darker shade on top of where I had it initially. Okay. Clean my brush off. I'm actually going to go in and take more of this shade here, this first one. I want to bring that all the way down, right there. Now I went a little too high over here, but that is perfectly fine. I went a little bit outside of the line, that is okay. But notice the direction that I am taking my paintbrush in. It's going along a curve. But I don't want to overdo it. I'm very softly brushing this paint. But the moment you start seeing what you applied underneath here, that's when you know you're blending too much. So it's starting to look a little wonky. So I want to just give it a rest. Clean my brush off. And I'm going to go ahead, go back in where that darker shade, and bring that down the stem of the flower. Clean my brush off. Now I'm gonna go where this top of the flower is, and I want to go in with my tint, not the lightest one, but the one right next to it. I'm gonna go in and fill this all the way in. You might need to switch over to a different brush. So you can get in those small crevices. Try not to get the darker shade inside of this tint. So while that is still wet, I'm going to clean my brush off, because now I want to go in for my highlight with that lighter tint right at the tip here, the tip of that flower. Once again, I'm going to clean my brush off, make sure it's dry. I dipped it in the water and I dried it on a towel, and now I'm just going to blend it. All right, you guys, we have our colors. We have our hue, our tint number one, no, I'm sorry, our shade number one, shade number two, our tint number one, and our tint number two. We are going to get started painting. I'm going to take my brush, make sure it's dry. And the first color I'm going to start with is this shade right here. Right here. Let's start with our shade. Matter of fact, no. Let's actually start with our hue. Let's start with our hue. Okay. Let's make sure it's enough color on there. You want enough color. Notice how I use the tip of the brush to get in these tighter spaces. I'm gonna stop right there. Now, while that is still wet, I want to make sure I clean my brush off. Dry it. Go ahead in with my darker shade. I want to make sure it's enough paint on my brush. And I'm going to go right in this area, right underneath that fold. Using the tip of this brush to get in those tight spaces. And then I'm going to proceed to go along the curve of the petal. You see how this petal, everybody pay attention here. You see how this petal is, the edge is a curve? Both edges are curves. We want to go in those curved directions. We don't want to bring this color all the way down. Just right about there. Make sure you have enough paint on your brush so you can blend it. Okay? I'm going to clean my brush off. Make sure it's dry. And then I'm going to go in and take that first tint. Not the one we just used, but this one here. This one. And I'm going to go fill this area. I'm running out of paint. I need to probably make some more. I'm gonna go all on top of that red, that hue, that original hue. And so what I'm gonna do is, now I'm gonna go ahead, clean my brush, make sure it's dry, and blend it out. Right in here, I'm gonna blend it out. This side right here has too much water, so I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. You can always go in and add more color and go back and forth if you want. But you wanna blend very lightly. I'm gonna clean that brush off, and I'm gonna take that second, this here second shade, and I'm gonna take it down the stem. Clean my brush off. Now I'm gonna hit on this folded petal. I want to go in with my tint, the darker tint, the one with less white. Fill this shape in. This is the part of the flower that's folded over. Make sure you have enough paint over there. So now I'm going to clean my brush, and I'm going to add the lighter of the tints, the lighter of the two, and I'm going to add it to the tip of this petal that's folded over. Clean it off real good, and I'm going to blend it. And there. So once we're all done, once you understand how to blend, you'll be able to take any two-dimensional object, add different values to it, and give it a realistic look. So we ended up doing this part of the flower.